So if you remember, we're kind of in this screen time task force area. We're going to be looking at how screen times are used in school. That's separate from today. We're also looking at artificial intelligence. Rather than just going straight into a task force itself, I begged the commissioner to allow us to do a few learning sessions and just some series around what is AI and some of these things. Try to become consumers. Maybe you all use it every day in your lives, and if not, we'll step into some of those things. My purpose today would be to talk just a little bit about artificial intelligence, but I think if I land my mark, it's just giving us a few principles that will help us better navigate artificial intelligence in our lives. A couple things that I want to say on the front end would be artificial intelligence is a domain of learning, no different than like physics, right? So physics has its own classification, and so would artificial intelligence. It's actually been around for quite a long time. Well, I would say a long time, 1950s. Sorry if that was not long enough. And has really moved in. We've had some pretty big marks that have changed some things. 2012 was a big marker, and then 2022 was a big marker. Some experts would say that when it comes to artificial intelligence, the last 10 years was a lot about research and connecting. The next 10 years is about application. So yes, it will fill much more into our lives, in part because now they're in that, how is this integrating in our life space? So I'm going to build this spectrum or continuum, and I wish I would have potentially just made it a bell curve. So I'm going to ask rhetorically, where are you on this spectrum? And I would say, if you look at a normal bell curve, we have outliers generally on both ends, and I mean it totally respectfully, but I have learned when it comes to government and other entities, often we hear from the outliers because that's what brings the passion to our doorsteps. We rarely hear enough from the middle users. So if we are doing a learning session, I'm asking you to rent an idea. And so you're not buying, you're just simply renting, and I want you to rent a different place on the spectrum than you naturally show up. So if you are the all-in evangelist, I'm going to ask you to take a deep breath and step back for a minute and maybe put the hat of the doomsdayer on, or maybe just one spot on this spectrum, and vice versa. But I just think it'll be helpful in our little learning category. Let's talk about technological advancements. One of the things I've learned when talking about artificial intelligence is everyone has an opinion, and you're always wrong, it feels like. And so I have seen analogies like this used, and I've seen people troll people for using analogies like this, so I'm prepared to be trolled. What we've seen in the world is with every technological advancement, we will see creation and we will also see destruction, and ultimately we can just call that disruption, right? I'm going to slaughter this, but Plato is talking about an Egyptian myth where King Thais warns that writing, okay, would, quote, produce forgetfulness in the soul and give the appearance of wisdom, but nothing on the inside. Right? So there was a caution of maybe we shouldn't let people write. Now, was he fully wrong? Well, I can tell you right now, I can remember if I'm in a bind and my phone dies, I can call my wife. That's it. Literally, that's the only, right? I don't write things down anymore. So there is truth in all of these. There is real disruption with this. There is always a cost. And I want that to be, we need to own that, and we need to talk about what is that cost and who and how are we going to talk about that. So I'm going to give us some 4 principles. This is going to click off the four principles, which is Stephen R. Covey would say, or Jay Scott, he's the one that actually got me connected to this. The main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. I think for the State Board of Education, if I'm leading a learning series, I would see what is the main thing. And I would say our vision is to lead the world in the success of each student. If that is our vision, our mission would define success through rigorous quality academic instruction, career training, and character development according to each student's gifts and talents. If you can prioritize the primary questions, which I would say is this, then the secondary questions can often take care of themselves. But if we cannot anchor to the primary question, which is this, then those secondary questions will overwhelm us. So if we engage with artificial intelligence, It is because we need it to do something for us. And what is that thing we need it to do? We need it to assist us in the success of each student in Kansas. And if it cannot, we have no time for it. So the first principle is, I know I shrunk it down, it's a little unfair, I'm just gonna call it instruction first. Kansas keeps rigorous academic instruction at the main thing. Our time, talents, and resources prioritize high quality, standards aligned teaching for each student's success. And if it can't do that, then why are we talking about it? The next principle, I'll let you into the Steele family life a little bit, is use purpose-built tools for the job. So I'm a father of some rambunctious boys and a beautiful little girl. And I am trying to teach them to be men, and I want them to have integrity and a value to society. And so we spend a lot of time in our house talking about tools and using tools. I have a 5-year-old, his name is Wells. Wells can use the hammer anytime he wants, as long as it's not inside, in the garage, or on living things. That's his parameters. And then it's fair game, and I want him to test and try and figure out, do I want to use the pry bar today or the sludge, how that goes. We also have an axe at the house. You can imagine that as a different tool which Wells wants to use, and actually there's some debate here. Let's not bring my wife into this, but I let him use it. But there are different parameters. We've created a blood circle, right? That's a term that scouts use. And it's like, you will use shoes, you will have eye protection, and no one will be in this area while you use it, and you have access to this axe. He also wants to use the chop saw. Wells does not use the chop saw. My wife and I agree on this. There will be a day that's appropriate. It is not now. I bring up the silly analogy to remind us that not all tools are created the same. So when we think about AI, we cannot allow ourselves to use this big common AI bubble. We have to ask, what tool are we using and for what job? I will show you a tool today that I think is safe to use in the way that we're using it. I hope you can agree, because you are kind of a passive participant here. And so when we build these tools, we have to be very specific about what are we asking it to do, who are we doing it with, and how do we bring on those tools. I will also say with this principle, there is an immense amount of research on the pedagogy of how people learn. If you can take the science of learning with what artificial intelligence can do, I think we can make some really good progress. But if we use, not to pick on it, but a chat GPT to literally do everything, we will probably find ourselves in a worse off position. We should not activate that tool to grade and to do all of these things. But if we have purpose-built tools, I think we can go a long way. Number 3, the framework matters. Now, I'm not going to go too far back in time here, but I would say about a decade ago, I was teaching mathematics in middle school and high school, and I was a one-to-one teacher. We made a ton of mistakes. And I think one of the biggest mistakes we did is it was kind of this laissez-faire approach of like, we were more concerned about getting devices in than how the devices were being used. And so to give an example of that, I actually used to lead the Office of Educational Technology at the U.S. Department of Education. So you have a staff that you would think are like these tech bros. And it's interesting, we would always have people come to us and they'd be like, oh, I'm all in on tech. And I was so impressed with the staff that would be like, why? Or they'd say, hey, I'm going to do these devices. And they would always be like, but why? Because they were always going back to this, like, why are you doing this? If it's only for tech's sake, we're off on the wrong foot. But if you are trying to create a tier 2 instruction to supplement the core, now we're having a conversation, right? Now we can start talking about how is this tool going to be implemented. We'll spend a lot of time in this area. There are frameworks people have already developed for state boards of education to say this is the framework we would suggest you do. I'm not going to tell us to adopt it, but I want to look at those frameworks both internationally and nationally and say, here are what people are offering. Do you think that's appropriate for your role and what you do? The fourth principle now is really going to get into this AI space, which is if I can take some of the fear out of AI, at its core, it is a pattern recognition system. So let's talk about this. I'm going to do an activity. You can say it out loud if you want. And I'm going to oversimplify it. Let me just be clear for all my IT friends, and it's wildly oversimplified. It is raining outside, so I grabbed my... Okay, so everyone was like, umbrella, why did you say that? Because there's this pattern here that says umbrella. Well, you know that's not actually the only answer. So I could say, give me another answer. It's raining outside, so I grabbed my... Great. I started, so the majority said raincoat, but I started hearing different things. If you're in Southwest Kansas, you would have never said umbrella because it's always windy. Like that didn't even exist to me until I moved out of the state. So what you're doing here is it is a pattern recognition system. It has used an immense amount of data to start to interpret what is probably the next word. Now, what seems scary to us, but it is still a pattern, then they start to say, but I actually probably can tell you your next sentence. And then I can probably tell you logically what is your next paragraph. And actually, I bet you I can tell you your next topic. And you've seen that in Google when you looked up someone and then you go into the search bar and the next thing it asks for is either their net worth or their age. It's like, we know what you're thinking, right? Now, we don't always love that, but I'm just trying to remind you that this is a pattern recognition system, and the way it's deployed is to look for patterns, and then eventually we'll get to the point where it's trying to create new patterns that have never been seen before. So from all of this, I'm going to try to tell you what the future will be by, again, looking at past data. So here are our 4 principles. Instruction first, that'll help clean up a lot of noise. Purpose-built tools will help us serve students the best. The framework matters. How we bring it on or allow it to be into our schools will make a big difference to if this is successful or not. And then AI at its core is a pattern recognition system, and we can understand these things. We are in the driver's seat, and we can choose or not to choose to engage with this kind of stuff. Future topics on this is going to be, what is artificial intelligence? Let's talk about public perception. Turns out it is changing constantly. It's amazing. Like per month, you're like, everyone's in, and then a month later, like everyone's out. I'm not trying to say let's go with that, but I just think it's good to know what is out there. How are people feeling about this? We'll look at research and reports. You can imagine some early adopters wanted to be the first on the ground to say this is how to do it. That is an approach. There are some reports out there I think some of you have seen and share of what is the impact on the mind and what are some of those things, and are we worried about that? And of course, we're always worried about anything that is interacting with our students. And then, of course, frameworks for responsible adoption. All right, so I'm going to try something, and it can totally fail. I'm okay with failure here, so accept this with me, if you will. I am going to co-learn with a chat bot in your presence. I don't know if I don't know how you've used these in your life, but I want you to see this in action. This is not an endorsement of the tool. This is not me telling you you should do it in the classroom. Let's clean all of those up. But before I go here, let me say a couple things. I pay for this version because I want to control my data. There is a common understanding that if you're using free stuff, someone's getting something from you. Now, I actually do believe in the laws of the land and believe in the contracts that are set up here. And if they breach this contract, I anticipate I have the right to go before them in the court of law and handle these things. So the first thing I did for your awareness, and we will talk about this when we get into some things. So this chatbot connects to this mainframe. I'm sure I'm going to screw it up through these APIs. So there's this thing called a memory. It is learning how to speak to me. It knows how I like to be talked to. And so I actually am going to leave the access here. I'm going to say you can refer to my old chats, and you can refer to some of the ways I prompt you so that you can get to know the kind of questions I'm asking. I'm okay with this. The next thing, what I did on this bot here, if you can look, it is faded, but it actually says improve the model for everyone, and I have turned that off. That's code for share my data. Admittedly, I don't put a lot of things in there that I'm concerned about. I don't put in personal data, but I've decided for now, I'm not comfortable with it, so they can learn from someone else. This next step says so there's the improve the model for everyone, and then I just wanted to double down on this. This says voice mode. It is turned off. I am going to engage with it, and it's going to say, hey, can we use your audio recording or your video recordings to improve our model? And I'm saying today, no, you cannot. Okay? So that's the privacy that we're looking at as I engage in this tool. Let's see if it works. Professional singers don't always perform live for a reason, and I probably should have known that. Hey, can you hear me?
You loud and clear.
Great.
Let me know what you need.
Yep, I'm gonna be a little bit more blunt than I normally am with humans because the tool is great. Hey, so I'm gonna ask you, tool, if you will go ahead and increase your speed by 1.5. I need you to talk faster than you normally do, and then I'm gonna ask you not to repeat everything I say. Are you good with that?
Absolutely. I can do that. I'll speed things up to about 1.5 times the normal rate, and I'll skip repeating everything you say. Just let me know what you need next.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. I'm here in front of the Board of Education, so I am going to ask you, ultimately they do hire me, so we need to be very complimentive in the way that we talk to them. Do you understand that?
Got it. I'll keep it upbeat and complimentary for the board. Just let me know what you need me to dive into, and I'll jump right in.
Sorry, that's probably a bad joke. But okay, so I want to talk to you about artificial intelligence. I don't know a ton about it, but I really want to better understand it. Can you help me understand what is artificial intelligence?
Absolutely, and I'll keep the pace up. So, in a nutshell, artificial intelligence is basically a technology that allows machines to mimic human-like cognitive functions, things like learning from data, recognizing patterns, and making decisions. So, it's basically teaching computers to do tasks that would normally require human intelligence, and that's really the core idea.
Okay. So, if I called artificial intelligence a domain, are there subdomains within artificial intelligence? Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you perfectly. Keep going and let me know what else you need.
All right. Well, if you hear me perfectly, could you answer the question, which is, are there subdomains to artificial intelligence?
Absolutely, and I'll keep it quick. So yes, AI definitely has subdomains. You've got machine learning, which is all about algorithms learning from data. Within machine learning, there's deep learning, which uses neural networks. You also have natural language processing for language tasks and computer vision for interpreting images. So there are definitely a bunch of subdomains under the AI umbrella.
Okay, so let's explore machine learning. I just really want to understand this. I don't know much about machine learning, but I would like to, so I might need a few analogies on this. What is machine learning at its core for someone who doesn't know anything about it?
Right in. So machine learning is basically a subset of AI where we train algorithms on data so they can learn patterns and make decisions without being explicitly programmed for every scenario. So instead of telling the computer exactly what to do, you feed it data and it figures out how to improve its performance over time. And that's really the core of it, teaching machines to learn from examples.
Okay. And what then is deep learning? Is it just learning deeper through the machine?
Pretty much, yeah. So deep learning is a kind of machine learning that uses neural networks with many layered, hence the deep. These layers help it learn really complex patterns from large amounts of data. So it's basically just a more advanced, layered approach to machine learning that can handle things like recognizing objects in images or understanding speech.
So explain to me in one sentence each, what is AI, what is machine learning, what is deep learning, and what are buffaloes?
Absolutely. I'll keep it snappy. AI is basically the broad field of making machines mimic human intelligence. Machine learning is a subset of AI focused on algorithms that learn from data. Deep learning is a further subset of machine learning using many layered neural networks. And buffaloes, well, they're just large shaggy animals that roam the plains.
All right. Do they have anything to do with artificial intelligence?
Not really. Buffaloes are just the fun, random addition there. They have no connection to artificial intelligence. Just a nice reminder that not everything has to be tech related.
Thank you. Oh, shoot. The other thing I was going to do is I was going to ask it to create a transcript of what we did, and then on top of the transcript, turn it into a one-pager because we don't have all time for that, and then highlight the main points, and it would have said, yep, and then it would have delivered to me. So that is one of the apps that is out there. That is called so ChatGPT is a multimodal, which means it can do multiple things. Some tools are single modal, which means it only does one thing. It does text to speech, it does text to text, it does text to pictures. This can do multiple of those. This was really just a party trick. You may have not liked it, that's okay. But I am trying to, while we do this, is to show you some of these things that are out there. Let's see if I can just tease up the next thing. Next week, We will look at, or sorry, next month we will look at an artificial intelligence tool that will take briefs and turn them into a podcast. It sounds like meh, but I'll admittedly, the commissioner sends me stuff, and every so often I throw it into these, and on my run, I have a podcast. So look next time, I'm going to send you a podcast, and I need you to know it literally is just me putting 2 documents into this generator, and then it creates dialogue. And that is a way to learn. It is not the way to learn, and I don't even know if I want my kids to learn that way. Are you with me? I am not trying to sell this as an idea, just we're going to explore some of the spaces and things that are out there. So happy to take questions, happy to take criticisms, would love to write down some things you want to see or don't want to see again, but just kind of dipping our toe into artificial intelligence and to learn about it. I actually programmed. I listen to females better than men.
Betty. Thank you. Quick question, because, and really you did a very, very nice job of making it less intimidating. The big thing that kind of circles my mind, and I'm going to see if I can frame this question where it makes sense. When things are being used as they were intended, just like your example with the tools, there's a certain comfort level. And so we're going to have the good guy, bad guy. Bad guy gets in control of those tools and wreaks havoc or destruction. This is probably one of the major concerns I sense with a lot of people when we talk about AI. It isn't so much AI, but what people will in turn use that for. Perfect example, some insurance companies are using AI to determine if we're going to approve this treatment versus denying it. And then everything has to fit neatly, which life doesn't always fit neatly. So the concern is, how do you separate this so that there's some kind of safety valve of who's actually in charge of how this works? What kind of boundaries, what kind of guardrails can be there to make sure that the tools are being used as they should be properly? And if the public is relatively naive with this, how do you bring this all together so that AI is not as intimidating? That's a lot that I've packed in there, and dissect it any way that you want.
I would just say, when I was a teacher doing some one-to-one stuff, we kind of had the Wild West. As a teacher, you could download any app and try it with students. I don't know if I would recommend that ever again. There needs to be a framework on how things are brought on, and then we need to understand it. And I think the more students understand, I think of we had a kind of scary event this summer. I had a boy who had in a pool, he got close to what he thought was drowning. It was uncomfortable for all of us, and he got really scared of the water. And I think the best thing I can do for him right now is to teach him everything he knows, that he knows how to swim. And then hopefully he will know when he sees the ocean and other things, when can I use it and when I can't. So I do think knowledge is power in this space. And I think the more our teachers know, our principals and superintendents know about this, we can stand ready to say, sorry, this is used the wrong way, let's not do it. The less we know, and I think my concern is if we bar it off now and just say all is bad, then I think we'd start dipping our toes into water that's unsafe. So we need to figure out what's safe and what's not safe and teach people to swim, if that analogy works. Thank you.
Debbie?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm probably in the pragmatic, right in the middle already, but I'm the person who would, the Bible believer who probably thinks Antichrist is going to be full on into this AI, but I'm pragmatic about it. You're not going to turn AI away, and it doesn't mean it can't be used for good. So, that kind of thing. I missed Dr. New's study last night on Revelation, but what I wanted to ask is, I'm really excited. I'm excited to be learning this. I'm really enjoying your presentation, and I'm wondering, Dr. Watson, if you and Eric or Rayleigh could take this portion of the meeting and give it a separate video that is just its own, that I could share it out to my local board members, my constituents, because I think everybody would like to hear this without me saying, here's a 7-hour or 5-hour, whatever today ends up being, long video, go to the 1 hour, whatever mark. Just being able to have this portion and be able to share it out, because thank you for putting this on, because I am really enjoying this.
I appreciate that. Melanie?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Dr. Steele. Great presentation. I really like how you laid all of that out. There's so many things I want to ask you about, but I know that we're going to get to keep seeing you. Can you talk a little bit about the agreeability factor that comes in with AI? I mean, it seems to know and love you, you know, when you hear it speaking. And it also has a tendency to agree, does it not?
So I don't have a deep knowledge here, but I have watched some experts present on this. Again, can I do the caveat is I don't know how I feel about this when it comes to students, so I only speak adult to adult for a minute. I used to say I was really frustrated. I really don't like when AI says like, "Oh, good job," or like, "That's a good." I don't appreciate praise in general, and definitely not something that's fake. I don't think that's healthy. And some of the experts who are creating this said we were surprised by how many users said they'd never been complimented before.
Oh.
Now that's, again, we could easily tear into the wrong space there. I don't think we should get our social emotional connections with things that don't have social emotional connections. So I'm not there, but that was a reminder to me that maybe we could be more kind in the way that we interact in the world and do good. They are working on that agreeability. There's been some papers written about what does that mean. The problem is it's that idea of self. There's a lot of problems. Let's not make one. There's a lot of problems there. One of them is self-think. It'll affirm. You'll say, hey, I want to do a presentation on this, and some of those models are saying that's a great idea, and it's not a great idea. So part of that would be, it's called prompt engineering. I'm sure you all know more about it than I do, but if we can teach people how to do prompts, it helps get better answers. So maybe you're asking, hey, this is my view. Can you give me an alternative view? Can you show me the other side to this? Because nothing is so thin that there's not two sides, right? So you can prompt engineer a way out of that confirmation bias. Again, a tool that could be used if we teach people how to do it.
May I follow up? Thank you for that, because you led right into my second question, which was how do you get another perspective when it's agreeing with you? As a student, you ask a question, it's going to deeply validate whatever it is you're asking about and not offer an option. So thank you for that. I look forward to our future conversations.
Likewise, me too.
Michelle?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation. This has been wonderful. Did a little exercise with our college son about asking one question, and we kept the question the same. We didn't add any additives to it or anything, just the exact same question to 3 different AI sources where they could give you the feedback. And it was so interesting. Certain ones wanted more information to get, and the other one just gave us what it was. And what's interesting about it is it was something that we know factually because it was about me, right? It was about, so he's reading this to me, and some of the things were right, some of them were not quite right, but and so it depended on which one you went to get the answers. So what we were telling him, it was a little exercise, is don't just go to the first source, and then you also, what's out there may not be true, and that's just the untruth piece is just going around, and it was an actual, I mean, it was something that you could look, if you did dive, if you were to do a deeper dive, you'd find out exactly, oh, yeah, that's not enough information, or they need more information on that because that's not the full information that you should have on that. So what I was trying to say to him is do your deeper dive, don't just rely on the first source, go down deep, and because the information that's out there, the only person that knows the truth about that or knows the actual facts, unless you go dive deep, is the person that it's about that input that information or gave somebody that information. So it's so interesting, just going to 3 different sources with the same exact question and all the different resources or information you got from that.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Michelle. I actually wonder if this will help our students, how fast we start to realize that's not fully accurate. We may actually have better consumers of information. We could, if we design it right, right? Because we'll start to know I cannot trust it. Let me check again and again and again. And we start to triangulate data and say, I have 4 different sources that are coming to say this is wrong or right or something. And so there is a world in which students can be taught to do exactly what you taught your son, which is let's be critical consumers of information. And I think that's very helpful. I also love in your example that you sat down with your child. That matters, right? Versus like, hey, I just gave him the keys and said, good luck on the lawnmower and see how this ends. Watch out for the hill. Sorry, you didn't need that.
Well, you go sideways down that, what's going to happen?
We were going through some lawnmower training at my house, and we have some debates there on the hill.
Betty, did you have another comment?
I do, just kind of a quick follow-up question, because I have really been in a lot of conversations with schools that are looking at bringing the AI aspect into. From an observation standpoint, and for me, I was really having a hard time processing this, in the sense that AI, observing a classroom, can identify perhaps mannerisms of students that, I'm with you on that, or a student that perhaps is not participating and can identify, okay, this student, when you covered this topic, was not as engaged and could be. Is any of that really viable or possible?
Yeah, it's real. There's some models out there that is using facial recognition to decide if you are engaged in the content or not. My only thing in this moment right now is, I think if the community decides that's what they want, is a different conversation than a teacher or someone else deciding what they want. I mean, that's taking some images, right? Like that is, I've seen that model in other countries. I think there's a whole process of bringing that kind of technology on, and if and how that is done. But there is facial recognition out there that's trying to look at the engaged mind.
Okay, so it's not like the mirror on the wall and they know all and everything. It's still looking at some very basic, finite things.
Everything's algorithms. So there's always someone behind the curtain trying to decide what does it look like to not be engaged, right? And those are theories. And as you collect more data, you can say, you know what, this is starting to play out, or actually this is not. They just are deadpanned always, right? So that is part of that thing. And I can show you some of those things if you want to particularly look at that.
No, Danny.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Go back to what you said about the contract, because I'm curious, how do you know if they're breaking the contract or not?
Yeah, so I would love in further series to bring back people who read this for a living. By the way, my credentials are not really here, but I have learned enough that I do purchase things because then there is a contract with that purchase. And I do go ahead and read some of these things. There has been a movement that I'm grateful for. They're trying to get it into common language, right? More of the language I speak, not these lawyer language that like it means nothing to me. I appreciate people can write and speak like that. So let's answer that at another time. Admittedly, I will admit, I trust that when this says it is not collecting my data, I'm trusting that it is not. I have turned that piece off. There is a social contract there of trust. We'll bring in some experts to tell us, like, what does the fine print mean on that? And I'm happy to have them analyze this and be like, Jake said he's this. Is it true? There's always, this seems to, if there's a lawyer, there's always fine print.
Yes.
I mean that endearingly, Mark.
With all due respect.
With all due respect.
Debbie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To follow up on Danny's question, I'm curious at 1.5 speed, keeping it under 1 minute, what she would say the answer to his question would be.
You can ask it another time. I will take directions from Kathy however you want. I have actually asked and got some promptings of what do I need to look for in contracts. So if it's super dubious, it could lead me astray, but it did actually help. Said, here are some 4 domains you want to be looking for when you're looking at these tools. And I thought it upskilled my my reasoning.
Gotcha. Okay.
I just wanted to say I kind of use it like a card catalog, like you said, to point me in a direction. Then I'm going to do my own research. So just a caveat, I don't just whatever she said.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great way of using it.
Okay, yes, absolutely.
So, most of my life, at a young age, I went down to the local camera store and bought a Kodak 30 camera. And the very next week, Kodak came out with another model. This is in the 1960s. I was a young, and I was so outraged. I actually wrote a letter to Kodak. How would you do this? I just bought this, and you released a new, because in that era, it didn't change that rapidly, right? And I've always been kind of enamored by technology, and I wanted the CB and the nice CB and the early adopter. I am not here. I do this, but I think, and I'm saying this to educators, we need to slow down because people are wanting to sell us things, and this is more powerful than the internet, which I was an early adopter. It used to be a screen-based thing. I had to do I had to log in and had dial-up. All right. But Melanie, I so agree. Until we train in education, that when I ask it, it's just not going to agree with me. It's going to start to give me alternate things. And you can train bots to do that. I'm really reluctant because what will happen my opinion, totally my opinion, early adopters are just going to use it in ways that aren't analytical. And then we're going to be trying to backtrack from that. And it's not because anyone intends to do that, but I think the study out of MIT would validate that people that said, help me draft this, then initially they were going back and forth, Michelle, like I draft, you draft, which is what you want to do. By about the second or third day, they were just letting AI write it for them. And then that's when you start to wonder, especially if you're 9 or if you're 12. So I love it from an adult standpoint, Debbie, and experimenting and us thinking about it, just like giving your child the chainsaw, right? You gotta, is it time? And am I going to sit down with my kid and I'm going to walk through this? Because not every teacher and every parent's going to sit down with the child and walk through it. So Jake's going to be in front of you for next to several months as you start to formulate what is your role in this policy development, knowing it is coming very fast at every level in our environment. And how can you help educators make good sense out of it?
Did you have a quick thing, sir?
Yeah, very quick. Thank you, Madam Chair. So I keep going back to when we had that Stanford professor, it was maybe a year ago, talk to us over Zoom, and I printed his presentation off, and on the back of it had the disclaimer that this was written by a human being.
Yeah.
I
remember you brought that up to me before.
For some reason, that just really hit me. That's why I'm so hard on this AI.
Yeah, it's creepy. Thank you so much. This has been wonderful, and we really appreciate, because I'm definitely the one of I want to be doomsday about it, but it is here, it's real, and we have to have the conversations and the knowledge, because like you said, if we're afraid, it's because we don't have enough knowledge to handle it and to know what to do. So thank you, it was wonderful. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and move into our report on computer science education in Kansas. Dr. Stephen King.